Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What's more effed up than people think? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Drug overdoses. How many result in brain injury or death? Before working in critical care, I naively thought overdose equals stop breathing equals dead. So many get a round or two of CPR, left with a severe brain injury from lack of oxygen, and left to finish out a miserable life of a tracheostomy, feeding tubes, ventilators, recurrent infections of nearly all body systems in an understaffed nursing home, especially if they have no family who can be found or willing to compassionately withdraw care. On the note, it's extremely effed to the lengths we go to keep people alive, especially when it's clearly past their time. The foster care system. I'm glad it exists for obvious reasons, but good God, is it a nightmare? If you've ever looked into adopting a child, you will find out very quickly that it costs almost as much as a down payment on a house. In economical terms, the supply is way too large, and the demand is equally large, but the price is set so high, it closes a lot of very loving families out of the equation, not to mention the abuse a lot of those poor kids have to go through in the foster care system. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's only ever referred to in a funny way, and sometimes it is funny and ridiculous, but on the flip side, it really affects people and can ruin lives. Influencers starting their child's entire life on social media. Feel so sad for these kids. The fact that most of us wouldn't know how to survive if shit hit the fan and mass production of goods halted. I live in a state where water is scarce and couldn't farm if I tried because it's so dry. In America, at least, you can pay strangers to kidnap your kid from their bed in the middle of the night and take them to a reform school. IBS. People either seem to view it as a joke disease or react like, oh yeah, my stomach gets upset sometimes too. They don't realize how painful, isolating, and horrible it can be. People have straight up committed suicide because of the impact of IBS. Without having experienced it, it is basically impossible to imagine how much it F's your life up to be legitimately afraid of food. It's like having a chronic illness and a severe eating disorder all rolled into one. I sometimes wonder how much different my life could be if I weren't constantly trying to manage the trade-off of, do I avoid eating so I don't get sick, and these risk passing out, being too hypoglycemic to safely drive, etc., or do I eat and basically give up on all my plans for the next 24 hours because the likelihood that I'll be incapacitated. I don't know about other countries, but here in Australia, almost all apartment complexes, skyscrapers, and hotels, and many other structures in the country built in the last 10 to 20 years are built using PE, polythene, cladding. It's the cheapest type of aluminum sheets on the market, and the reason why it's cheap is because it's made out of petroleum, highly flammable, and will cause buildings to burst into flames, and deaths are almost an inevitability when they do catch alight. That's right. Who in their right mind ever thought it would be a good idea to build buildings out of petrol, especially in a hot country like Australia, where summer temperatures can reach as high as 51 degrees Celsius? And many people are completely unaware. Both myself, firefighters, and other construction workers and laborers have commented many times on how those buildings lasted more than 5 years without sinking in and of itself or bursting into flames. It's effed up. Health and wealth preachers. Not only they do essentially steal well-meaning people's money, but they are also leading them astray from truth. Health and wealth gospel is Gnosticism of the 20th and especially the 21st century. Civil forfeiture. You probably already think it's effed up, and it's even more effed up than you think it is. Even the name is gross. Tell me more. Otters. You guys know about how effed up dolphins are by now? Just look up the absolute menace otters are to baby seals, baby otters, and just small animals in general. Jehovah's Witnesses. For those born in, social isolation is forced upon them, only permitting them to create a social group within the religion. They also advise those kids to not go to college, and that they should spend all of their time going door to door. They socially cripple them, and then convince them to sabotage their own independence. That way, when they turn 18, if they're not towing the J-Dub line, they'll often just be kicked out ASAP, all while losing their entire social network, including just basic life advice from their own parents. In many cases, it sadly does lead many of those children to return to their independent state. It's a much sicker power dynamic than people expect. The fact that we spend more time with our coworkers and at work than we do with our own families. This is extremely messed up. As a parent of a 4-year-old, I see her maybe 3 hours a day. A true shame. Corporations selling your information for profit. Some people just don't understand how effed up it really is. Also, ISP monopolies, F them. Breeding dogs with horrible health issues like French and English bulldogs who struggle to breathe their entire lives because we think their squished faces are cute. Also, not receiving pay increases to match inflation or cost of living increases. My utilities literally went up 40% this year. Taxes increased. Everything increases except my pay. So how am I supposed to get by? I bet your boss's pay went up. People deliberately misinforming others for political or financial gain, literally killing millions with no remorse. True psychopaths. Being an adult with ADD. A lot of people see you as awkward and loud, but the truth is that your brain is operating completely differently than theirs, though no fault of your own. Having been on meds for a time, it is night and day. My brain goes 150 miles per hour, but with meds it slowed down to 55. And getting medicated for it outside of your formative years is a real struggle. Most doctors will think you're just after a high, but you're literally sitting there going, I can't think like other people do, and because of it, I'm suffering and need help. Social media. It has damaged the way we look at ourselves, our bodies, and has arguably caused much more harm than good. No argument from me. Lack of accessibility for disabled people. For most people, it's an afterthought, but for those who need it, it can be life-changing in a good or bad way. One of my friends has a neurologic disorder, so that he has to move very slowly and very carefully, or he falls and cannot pick himself up. People constantly give him shit because he's in his 30s and he doesn't look sick, and they think he is on drugs or something. There have been many times when he had to give up on simple things, like going to an appointment or meeting family and friends, just because of some random obstacle thrown his way and no one giving him the time of day to help, or worse, abusing him. The frustration literally reduces him to tears sometimes. Every time he tells me one of those stories, and there are always new ones, my blood boils. Be kind to people who struggle to move around. Not every disabled person is in a wheelchair. Dying of natural causes. In movies and TV shows, it's perfectly normal. People with white hair closing their eyes and going to sleep after saying something meaningful. In real life, it's losing speech. Then after a few days, losing the ability to swallow food. Then there's a couple of days of groaning and wheezing. The eyes dry up. The lips crack and dry up. The tongues dry up. You have to dab it at it to keep it moist. The whole while you are wondering if the person is conscious or enduring this pain and madness. The last hour or so is that weird and loud breathing that is both a gasp and groan at the same time. Each breath is a desperate act by the body to keep going until it finally stops. Having gone through it twice with my parents, I volunteered a palliative care ward because a lot of people go through this alone. In America, land of the free, land of opportunity, I pay a health insurance company a third of my paycheck just so I can pay an additional $4,000 before they will help me with surgery and medication costs. Gonna have to get a second job just to pay for health insurance. This should not be an issue in a first world country. ETA. What's most people consider a first world country? And no, this does not include state, federal, and local taxes, Medicaid, or Social Security, which is paid out every check. Yes, I spent 2 weeks shopping around. This was the best plan I could find to fit my basic needs. And the government decided I made too much money to qualify for assistance. God bless America. People who encourage toxic work culture, they simply don't realize the type of expectation they are setting. You're paid for certain hours of work. Don't go above and beyond. If you are working 12 to 13 hours days, not only are you being overworked, but company needs to hire an additional person for that job. Also, when your children see you working like that, they think either it is normal or they are being avoided. Either way, they will tend to float away from you as you aren't there for them. So stop with that. If the work doesn't get done, it will be done the next day. If you're working 12 to 14 hours a day, the company needs to hire more people. Best way to do this is to leave the laptop at work. Easier said than done. As someone who enlisted in the U.S. military while still in high school, me too, the fact we are recruiting kids to fight wars and will show advertisements and try actively recruiting them before they are even an adult, some I don't even think are mature enough to even make an informed decision. These kids just finished high school. Some are still trying to figure out their place in life, and military recruiters just go, join the military, you'll find yourself there. Send them through a 2 to 3 month long boot camp where they're given clothes to wear that match everyone else's, a weapon, then sometimes additional follow on the training, then boot their asses overseas to fight wars in which they might never come home alive. Kids who had a whole life ahead of them. When I was younger, I was really gung-ho about the military, but as I've gotten older and matured, it seems wrong to me. Really predatory.